I now call this regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I learned that the other day. Thank you. Director Potts, would you please read the board priorities?
Board priorities. The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Gordon, would you please read the mission and vision statements?
The district's mission statement is to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Our vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Gordon. Mr. Superintendent, would you please tell us about the goals we're going to be talking about tonight?
So one of the things at one of our last meetings, committee as a whole, we wanted to tie in our board superintendent goals to every meeting to ensure that we are connecting our business to our goals. And so tonight we are focusing in on goal 2, a continued relationship building between the board and superintendent in the areas of trust and communication. And number 3, it is the expectation of the board that the district finance issues are resolved and staff will continue to keep the district in compliance with all state reporting mandates. Those were the 2 goals that were directly connected with the business that we're conducting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to presentations. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Tonight we have our program director that oversees talented and gifted education, Miss Bonnie Acey here, and a team of people. So Bonnie, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the front. This presentation's been scheduled for a while, so we appreciate the patience of our tag department, not our communications tag department, but a different tag department in our district. And so with that being said, I'll turn this presentation over to Miss Acey and her team. So please do your introductions, Bonnie, as you see fit. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for providing this presentation. And again, apologize for any times that you've been rescheduled. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Yes, we're excited to be here. As I do introductions, Emily Becker, our tag coach, is going to hand out a couple Valentines that our students made for you guys. We thought it'd be important to hear the voice of our students and what they love about Gifted and Talented. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share. And I think, Brenda, if you could pull up the slides for me. Perfect.
Thank you.
So, yep, I am Bonnie Acey. I'm the Program Director of Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment, as well as I oversee K-12 TAG program. Emily Becker is our K-12 TAG coach. And then with us, we also have Andrea Stewart, who I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Thank you. I have the privilege of supporting TAG. It's a fantastic team to work with. We work on many of their goals that tie to your goals that were mentioned tonight. I have several roles. I support the Advanced Learner MTSS team with the Department of Ed. I'm the director of the center, and our focus is on personalized learning and putting learners at the center of their learning. And I'm also on the statewide Future Ready Task Force and support student engagement, as well as proficiency-based learning like your SBAR. Thank you.
Perfect. So, yep, so we're going to go on to our next slide. Thanks, Brenda. So our purpose for today is we're going to do a brief program overview, but we're primarily going to focus on the board request that was for our tag identification process. And we did link in there, I'm sure you're all familiar with the policy, but we definitely wanted to capture that within policy. It fits very appropriately to our tag identification process that we will create a valid and systematic procedure employing multiple criteria for identifying gifted and talented students, and one that mirrors the district's ethnic and cultural diversity as closely as possible. So those are going to be things that we're going to be talking about in our presentation today. And at the end, if there are any questions, we'll be happy to answer. So as part of our mission and vision, do you want me to tell you next slide? Is that helpful? Next. Okay. About 5 years ago, we created an action plan, and we really wanted to ensure that we ensured 3 goals. And one was to move away from that siloed approach to more of a comprehensive gifted and talented program. We wanted to create equitable identification and service models, and we wanted to establish ourselves as a PLC, a professional learning community, and a culture of learning for all. We knew that we had a lot of learning to do as a group about what gifted was and what gifted wasn't. And so as part of that process, we developed a mission and vision. A mission is a statement that provides our department with a clear and effective guide for making decisions. So as a tag department, we created a mission that says it's to maximize the potential for all identified students each and every day, based on intellectual readiness and affective needs.
And then the vision statement ensures that all the decisions made are properly aligned with what we hope to achieve as a tag department. And our vision is the Davenport Community School District Talented and Gifted Program will foster a growth mindset in all learners to think critically and take action.
Next. So as a department, we also developed the following program goals. And so you can kind of see the bolded parts that are up there, but most importantly was to provide a variety of services that would be all day, every day. We wanted to make sure that tag wasn't just happening during the 30 minutes a tag teacher pulled them out or pushed into a classroom. So really working on a full range of services that would provide that rigorous learning opportunity within and beyond the regular classroom curriculum. A program that would meet our gifted and talented students' needs in all identification domains, which we have reading, math, leadership, and creativity, as well as serve them in both cognitive and affective. So cognitive is more that reading and math, how you think, that academic piece, where the affective is more that social emotional lens. Next.
All right, another goal is to identify approximately 5 to 12% of the student population, and you'll hear us speak more to this range in terms of using building norms to ensure equitable identification and representation of our student population, and we'll refer back to this topic later in the presentation. So students in this 5 to 12% range will receive differentiated programming options. Both the tag facilitator and the classroom teacher collaborate together to provide differentiated curriculum through the following direct and indirect models. So consultation and collaboration, that's where the facilitators join CTP. They have conversations about students and their needs with teachers. Teachers may come to them needing extensions or ideas on how to differentiate. Push-in programming, that's where facilitators go into classrooms and teach lessons or co-teach predetermined lessons, units, or extensions. And then our pull-out programming is where facilitators pull out students and complete lessons from our TDG and our tag curricula. Another goal is to provide resources to classroom teachers in order to meet the needs of the gifted and talented students. And then our final goal is to share information about our program. We've been attending K through 16 tag statewide leadership meetings where we share and receive useful information, and then right now we are sharing this all with you.
Perfect. Next. Okay, so we're going to go into part 1 of just specifically on our identification processes. And so the first thing to know is that we have 2 different types of gifted and talented services in Davenport. That first type is TDG. That refers to our talent development group. And these are flexible groups that can change year by year based on students' needs, what they need above and beyond our core curriculum.
And then tag is Talented and Gifted. It's where we formally identify students with gifts and talents, and the TAG facilitator services them in collaboration with the classroom teacher. They are also provided differentiated instruction, specialized services, and extension opportunities.
So this is kind of a big one, but I'm going to break it down year by year for you. So we mentioned that we created an action plan. And so this is a 5-year action plan with our blueprint and goals that we've accomplished specifically in the area of identification and assessment. And so in that column for 17-18, we worked with our TAG staff on casting a wider net, and that was with that intent to broaden our elementary talent development groups to give more students the opportunity to develop those talents into gifts. We created a data template that we use yearly that pulls together our longitudinal picture of students to formally identify them. We started giving the COGAT not just to every third grader, but also to 20% of our fifth grade students. And again, with that purpose of casting that net for more of an equitable approach and determining the types and needs of services that our kids need above and beyond core instruction. In year 2, for 18-19, we created a formalized district exit procedure. Again, consistency is really important. We wanted to make sure that we were doing things consistently in all of our buildings. We developed an identification service letter and discontinuation service letters, again with that consistent communication plan. In year 3, 19-20, very excited that we created a portfolio review process that helps us formally identify students in the area of leadership and creativity. This process can also be used for students who may not be good test takers, but need instruction above the core curriculum. We also worked with the Mississippi Bend area AEA team, data team, to review our underrepresented population identification data. And we moved to the online COGAT screener, which has been very successful. In 2021, we developed service summaries that were connected to our TAG programming and our goals to help with that communication to families to see how students were doing and what services they were receiving in gifted and talented. In 21-22 school year, we've secured a spot on the report card for both TDG and TAG comments around our quarterly program goals to each family. So those would be each year some actions around identification. Next.
All right, so we have a 3-stage identification process when we are identifying students. So there's data collection, then we screen the data, and then we use that data to decide what will meet the student's needs. So our TDG philosophy, Talent Development Group, is we try to cast a wide net so we consider all learners within the student population and we look at their strengths. Our talent development model focuses on building upon students' assets through programming options before formally identifying them as talented and gifted. So stage 1 is where we collect data. So we use classroom observations, both the teacher and the TAG teacher goes into the classroom. Facilitators push into kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms, and we give something called the King-Or Observation Inventory, or KOI for short. And on the next slide, I'll address everything in detail. We give the COGAT, Cognitive Abilities Test, to all third graders, as well as the top 30% of our fifth graders, according to our fifth grade identification sheet. We use Isap Scores. A portfolio review of student work is another example of data we use. And then parents and teachers can also use SIGs, which stands for Scales of Identifying Gifted Students, to recommend students they feel need service beyond the core classroom standards. So that's all the data we use. Stage 2 is we screen for formal ID. So here we narrow down the number of students to approximately 10 to 20%. And in this step, all the data is put into a spreadsheet. And then it's sorted by building norms so we can identify. A more narrow examination of the verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal measures come in here. And then we match the services that we provide to the students with our programming. And then the final stage is formal identification. And this typically happens in the spring of students' 5th grade year. All the data is compiled and it is reviewed by TAG facilitators. We actually have a committee. There's a TAG administrator, additional members such as teachers, principals, and counselors. And we blindly look at the information and the data first, and then we try to match the students' needs to the services we give. Students typically identified are in the top 5 to 12% of the building population. However, keep in mind that in a building with a higher need for services beyond the core, you'll see a higher percentage of students identified. Students are identified as gifted or domain specific gifted and served according to those domains. These are all of the assessments and tools that I mentioned on the previous slide, so I'm just going to explain them. So Isap Scores, you know what those are. Teacher and family recommendation, so SIGs I mentioned. So teachers and parents, they fill out these scales, and then there's a home version for home and a school version for teachers, and there's also a narrative piece that parents and teachers can give examples of work that students have done, and then it's brought back to the TAG facilitator and scored. We also look at FAST assessments and the work that they do in class and tests they take in class. The portfolio review, which has been mentioned before, is a piece where students collect artifacts. So they pick 3 artifacts that would identify them in leadership. Then they have to write reflections on each of those pieces. And then we have a committee that meets and decides if they should be identified for creativity, leadership, or an academic piece. So those kids that don't test well, or we don't have tests for leadership or creativity. So that's another thing we use. The KOI, King or Observation Inventory, I mentioned previously, is planned experiences that teachers go into the classroom, and their lessons, and they're designed to identify gifted potential and minority or low socioeconomic students. These populations are frequently difficult to identify through standardized tests, and this process helps teachers initiate appropriate differentiation for these students, and who their learning responses just might exceed what the core gives them or doesn't give them. And then acceleration is on there. We use the Iowa acceleration scale. Grade skipping is often what it's referred to. So it just assists in the decision-making process when we're looking at a student who feels they should be whole grade accelerated. It standardizes the process. So it's a guidance tool, and it was developed in Iowa City by the Bell and Blank Center, and it's used in all 50 states, Australia and Canada and New Zealand too, and has 10 sections, and it takes all kinds of factors into account, like the age of the child, what the school can offer. They have a sibling that'll be in the grade they'll be in, and general school and family information, developmental factors, interpersonal skills that the student has, and then even the student's feelings on being accelerated. And it also looks at ability testing, aptitude, and achievement. And then COGAT is the last one up there. And the TAG department has created videos for professional development, and they are intended to educate school staff on TAG or TDG specific topics. There's a KOI video linked, an acceleration video, and then the COGAT video we're going to watch because it explains it a lot better than I could do right now.
Thanks, Brenda. I think if you just minimize, it's already open, they said.
This test measures students' learned reasoning abilities in 3 areas. It is not a measure of effort, attention, motivation, or work habits. This is the only test given to all students that measure their ability. All other district tests given to students are achievement tests. The COGAT provides data for the identification of gifted students, as well as emphasizing the strengths of minority, special education, and ESL students. The COGAT also spotlights students with a large discrepancy in the test for further examination.
We're in a creepy dungeon.
The COGAT has 3 tests:
out when we practice.
verbal, quantitative, and nonverbal. The verbal battery measures flexibility, fluency, and adaptability in reasoning with verbal materials and solving verbal problems. These reasoning abilities play an important role in reading comprehension, critical thinking, writing, and virtually all verbal learning tasks. The quantitative battery measures quantitative reasoning skills, flexibility, and fluency in working with quantitative symbols and concepts, and the ability to organize, structure, and give meaning to an unordered set of numerals and mathematical symbols. These skills are significantly related to problem solving in mathematics. The nonverbal battery measures reasoning using geometric shapes and figures. Students must invent strategies for solving novel problems, and they must be flexible and accurate in implementing them. It gives teachers data on students' reasoning abilities. It gives information on how to use the data. It identifies weaknesses and helps teachers build on strengths. And it offers an alternate perspective of our students. The COGAT gives teachers data on students' reasoning abilities. The COGAT score tries to evaluate how well a child learns. The SAS score tells how a student compares to others in the same age group. It has a mean of 100 with a standard deviation of 16. The standing score is a normalized standard score. Teachers can gain valuable insight that can help them assist and teach their students more effectively. Based on a student's score, they may exhibit specific strategies in each area. Students may have specific needs that can be addressed. And there are helpful strategies available to teachers to help them teach all students to achieve higher. COGAT provides an ability profile for each student. Profile code is explained and linked to specific instructional strategies in the interactive profile interpretation system at this website. COGAT and its website can give every teacher valuable information on how to help all students to achieve at higher levels.
Thanks, Brenda. If you want to go back to the slides, that would be great. Perfect. So building level norms, we mentioned the use of building level norms versus district norms for identification. So in order to best serve our diverse population and ensure equitable, gifted, and talented programming, building norms are used for the identification process. Building norms ensure that students are compared to other students within a particular educational context, so like a singular school, in which his or her needs will be met. Using local norms allows the student's performance to be compared to his or her peers at their same school based on the building's core services. And I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to talk a little bit about our equity and our services.
Both Bonnie and Emily referenced the board policy about having the student population that is receiving tag services mirror as closely as possible the population within the Davenport Community Schools. So our goal here is to ensure we're making a good faith effort to identify learners who need services that go above and beyond the core in proportion to the local population. So that's in proportion to all of Davenport, as well as Bonnie just mentioned, within the local context in an individual school. So in this case, on this slide, we're comparing all 6th graders in the district who identify as Asian to the percentage of identified tag students who identify as Asian. You can see in the 2022 school year that those percentages were actually the same for our Asian learners in Davenport. Even though there's some wider discrepancies in some of these years, notice that the N size, the number of students that match those categories is quite a bit smaller in some years than other, which might make that spread a little bit wider if there's a difference of even one learner. There will always be variation from year to year. This is an example of 6th grade. What we keep an eye on is significant over or under representation. For example, national trends often show an over-representation of both Asian and white students in tag programming. It's important to note that the percentage of students who are identified as tag, as Emily mentioned earlier, range from 5 to 12% per year from grade to grade. Neither the population nor the needs that learners have each year are static. Next slide, please. So as Bonnie mentioned, a lot of our services, and also Emily when she was describing the 3-tier identification process, we're working on casting that wider net, looking at learners in the wider population. So you can see here that Davenport's identification process is actually closing the gap between the representation of sixth graders who identify as Black and the percentage of identified tag students who identify as Black. Through that process that Bonnie and Emily and her team have put into place, that gap is beginning to close. Next slide, please. It's another example with the Hispanic and Latino learners within Davenport. The gap here ranges from about 3 to about 8% year to year, but through the changes that Bonnie and her team have put into place, we're consistently closing that gap and getting closer and closer to the district population. And the last example we have is the white students. This gap ranges from about 16% to about 22%. In the most recent year, we're at about 16%. So again, trying to make sure that we're also not over-representing any populations within the Davenport Community School Districts so that it closely mirrors as possible the population itself at large. Again, these same data can be seen for local buildings, but these were all district-wide data for sixth grade.
Again, thank you for letting us come and talk today.
Any questions from the board?
I do.
Director Klein, Jerome?
Since this was my board request a year and a half ago, yes, I have questions. By using building norms, if a student goes to a different school, then they suddenly are not within that group. How is that handled?
So with TDG, if they're at elementary, again, those are those flexible groups. So depending on if their needs are met in core or not is continually analyzed and assessed when we look at that data every year. We did mention as they go to junior high, because we're able to serve with both push-in, pull-out, as well as consultative model, we can meet their needs in any of our junior highs when they pool all together. It's a nice benefit of having a large district.
It's nice to see that creativity and leadership has become a part of this because when I taught, it was 100% on a test score. And this year you're tag and next year you're not. And that made no sense to me. So that we are looking outside of that early on. It used to never be on a test score. It was all teacher recommendation in all areas, creativity, the fine arts and all of that. So it's nice to see we're going back and pulling that part in. I guess that's it at the moment.
Any other questions? Director Potts?
I think it's important to say that we need, I think generally people think of TAG as, okay, that's your 6-year-old that's going to be a nuclear physicist, okay? Whereas the variety of students that are involved in TAG programs, because it's multiple programs that appeal to a variety of students. You may be talented and gifted in math, and you may be a horrible writer. You may be a musician par excellence and read 3 grades below grade level. And I think we need to constantly remember that TAG actually differentiates because the needs of talented and gifted students are unique and different. Talented and gifted students that don't receive the appropriate programming fade. They drop out, you know. But I think it's extremely important that we all understand that this, obviously our talented gifted program isn't, you know, you got this score, you're in, you didn't get this score, you're out. No, because you may not get that score, but you still may have a talent or a gift that needs to be taken care of.
Agree. It's been a great part of that learning journey that we've been doing in collaboration with the AEA and with our TAG facilitators to ensure that. So, yes.
Director Beck?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the presentation. I was really appreciative, Bruce, of seeing the intentional effort to broaden the diversity of students in these programs. You know, I've had my son actually mention to me when he was in elementary school, you know, he noticed that there was not diversity in his pull-out group. And so I think it's really important that we are trying to work towards making these talented and gifted groups represent the students that we have, because talents and gifts come in all sorts of forms. And as you mentioned, a lot of these screeners don't identify students who aren't academically achieving, and that has nothing to do with whether they're talented or gifted or accelerated in some way. I guess my one question would be, you're using these particular screeners, and I apologize if you mentioned it. It was kind of hard for me to hear all the details. It sounds like at least one of these, the KOI, is designed to identify students who are traditionally underrepresented in talented and gifted groups. And this COGAT is sort of a proprietary product that somebody designed. How do we know these are the right ones to do the job that we're trying to do, I guess, would be my question.
Go ahead, you want to start and I'll finish?
That's why we use a variety of them, because we don't use just one thing to identify. So we do have a variety of screeners, so to speak.
And the KOI is about observation, so it's lots of observations over time. So you can actually get to see the learning behaviors right there in front of you, as opposed to relying on a standardized test where you can't see the learning behavior. So you can actually see the way kids think when you're in a KOI, because you're actually with the child. And then with the COGAT, one of the advantages is there's a nonverbal battery in addition to the other two. And research shows that that's a very strong test for learners across the board, because it does not rely on English proficiency. It does not rely on math skills or specific English language arts type skills. It's actually manipulating things in the mind and thinking about shapes and things like that. So that's a portion in particular that we're really able to look at and look for strengths within learners that may not show up. And the additional part of the COGAT is it's about the reasoning ability, not like what I've learned or memorized. So it's really about how kids think. So that's why that test is so much more valuable than just the ISASP alone. It helps us look at kids a lot differently.
That makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate also that you're bringing creativity and leadership into it, because those are things that are not typically, we don't think of as evaluating. And as Director Potts said, somebody might be be very gifted musically, but not necessarily be gifted in terms of other domains. So I know you said you were testing or screening all students in the early grades, but you only screen some in fifth grade. Is there a reason why you don't just screen all fifth graders to see who's, again?
So we have that data from third grade where we've done all third graders that take that COGAT, and then looking again to make sure that we have some additional things that might pop. That's why we give it again to that 20% of fifth grade, just to have one other data set that we can look at before making that formal identification in fifth grade.
I guess my question would be, though, why not test all the fifth graders again, right? Because maybe I don't know how it works. I'm not a developmental psychologist. I don't know how it works, but why because now they've already been identified as top whatever percent. Is there some reasoning behind that, rather than testing all fifth graders to allow them to shine in some way?
Yep, I can speak to that just a little bit. There's two plateaus that we see. There's the third grade plateau and a little bit of a fifth grade plateau. Sometimes it comes from the preparation that learners have at home before they've come to us, and that the supports they get at home. So that's partly why there's a little bit of a plateau there in third grade, because some of the effects of school are now starting to even that out a little bit. Fifth grade is another one of those plateaus. When we're giving it, I think you said it's up to 30% now, correct, of the fifth graders. You're actually, that net is quite a bit wider than what the expected when you're expecting 5 to 12%. So they're actually casting much wider than what the expectation would be for services. And they're also looking and reviewing data in fourth grade in addition. So they're not just looking in third and fifth. They're reviewing in third and fourth and shifting TDG groups during that time to collect observational data. So no learners left behind there. They're able to make sure that they're really making sure that they're overcasting who might. But the test is fairly long and intense, and so we don't want to give it to learners who it's going to stress them out and they're not going to score in a range that would necessitate services. That's the other piece we've really tried to work on. That tag programming is about services they need that exceed the core. It's not a program or a club, right? So we're just trying to make sure that kids don't feel stress taking a test that wouldn't be appropriate to identify the needs that they have.
Thank you.
Director Gordon.
So I apologize if you answered this and I missed it. There was a lot. Um, all of this seems to be very heavily focused on elementary schools. So I know that you said that in the middle and high school levels, a lot more needs are met during core because I think just the diversity of classes offered. But at that level, it seems to fall more on the student themselves to choose those classes, or for teachers to be like, that's what you should, or counselors, I guess, to tell them. So how do you ensure that those students that are getting those tag services in elementary schools stick with it or make those better choices when they get to middle school and high school? Do you see a drop off in participation in tag as the kids get older, or what does that look like?
So one of the things that we implemented was called PEPs. So they're personal education plans, which might be similar to like when you think about an IEP, but for a tag student. So that follows them once they're formally identified through junior intermediate, through high school. So the tag facilitator meets with all identified tag students yearly to help set goals. As they get older in middle school and high school, that 3-tier program model that Emily talked a little bit about, and again, we could come back and talk about the programming options, but it does very much what you talked about, work with the counselor on what do we need within a schedule. Are they AP courses, for example, as one option? They also have push out and pull out. They also have different opportunities like mock trial, battle of the books, different things like that that they can participate in as well. So that range as they get older is more individualized based on their PEP and what goals they set for themselves with their facilitator.
Director Klein-Jerome.
Are there lesson plans that are developed for the elementary so that, over my many years of teaching, they would pull them out and they'd read books, and not everybody, but in one experience, read a book and answer questions. Well, I could do that in my classroom. So are we giving these tag teachers some lessons to say, this is what's going to push them, not read a book and answer questions? Or
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked about that. And again, we actually have a part 2 all about that. But it is very much a guaranteed viable curriculum that we've worked on. We've purchased curricular resources as well for them to do that is above and beyond. As you know, with our prioritized standards, they also have that enrichment and exceeds column on each of our prioritized rubrics. So our tag facilitators have gone through professional development in those areas for how to extend and enrich even those grade level standards.
thank you.
Any other board members have questions? Student board members, you have any questions? And we didn't get you microphones.
Oh, we're bringing them over when we're done.
Perfect. Do you have something?
Just close it up if you don't.
Thank you all for the lovely
Happy Valentine's Day.
from your from all the students and stuff. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative, and I hope it was well worth the wait for Director Klein-Jerome. But thank you for extending your Monday night to hang out with us when you could be in other places. So
Thank you.
Well, before you go, this has been a little bit of a journey, and want to thank you, Bonnie, for taking the lead on this when this was given to you 5 years ago. It was in a very similar place that I think Director Klein-Jerome was thinking about. And one of the things that I'd like to applaud you for is empowering other leaders in the district and also reaching out to one of the best in the state. I don't know if Bonnie emphasized this on the front end, but Andrea is an absolute treasure around the state. And when we get some things knocked off on our list, she has some things that will absolutely be game changers for us. We talked about 3 years ago, and I haven't forgotten. And so I applaud our team for doing the work, but also reaching out to experts from around the state to make sure that we see a bigger picture than what's occurring inside of Davenport. So our TDG and tag programs inside of our district are changing, are closing the gaps, and I'm proud of that work. And thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for helping us along this journey, Andrea. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
thank you all again. we will move on to student board reports.
Thank you.
You want me to turn it over to you?
Thanks, Ms. Becker.
And you can start at whatever end you all want to.
I'll go first. Okay, so we've got a lot going on at West. So next time we'll be sharing more of what's going on. We don't want to splurge it all today. So some really exciting news. Our boys wrestler, we have 2 boys wrestlers that are going to state this Wednesday. They qualified over the weekend, and those wrestlers are Aiden Nicholas for the 120-pound, and then Kelton Youngberg at 145. And then our robotics club, the Disruptive Innovation number 6317, is building a robot that will complete several tasks and compete at the UNI Dome for the Iowa Regional Competition in March, at the end of March. And then today, I'm president of Falcon Friends, so we had a cute Valentine's Day celebration. That was really fun to interact with all of the kids in the building, and it's just nice to get that one-on-one time with different groups of students. Our Shaheen Yearbook staff won first place for the American Scholastic Press Association for their 2021 book, and also got the Outstanding Section Award for their sports pages, which they're really proud of that. They work all year long on that, getting ads and all that type of thing. 5 students in our vocational auto program earned their entry-level certifications for the ASE automotive brakes, and this certification will increase their wages at future jobs and career paths, and Mr. Grapp is so proud of them. 7 art students went to the Hot Glass Studio in downtown Davenport and worked with a medium that's very hard to work with and extremely expensive. There will be pictures of their creations I shared with you guys. And then our IJAG representatives went to Legislative Day on January 31st and had a chance to meet with Governor Reynolds. Our representatives are Corey Carter Jr., Cleo Granberry III, Tucker Avis, and Cassius Henderson.
So our boys basketball team had a huge win over North in the last 0.3 seconds. It was a really intense game, but they pulled it off. This was last Friday. It was also senior night, so it was nice to see the dance team and the boys just spend their last times together. We have 7 seniors leaving from both the dance team and the boys basketball team. Show choir recently placed 3rd overall at the Bennett competition. They received Best Crew Award, Generosity Award, and senior Peyton Flynn was awarded a Star Performer Award. Junior Paige Sinkson also received this Star Performer Award at the last competition. 12 students were accepted into the Cte Ambassadors Program, where they serve as spokespersons at various business events. Senior Megan Dunn qualified for the National Speech and Debate Tournament and was named Eastern Iowa Student of the Year. Jazz Band received a D1 superior ratings from all judges at the IHSMA Jazz Festival. So lots going on at West.
All right, so over at Central, our student-run art and literary magazine Indigo Inc. is now accepting submissions. This year, the magazine's a little different because it's going to be virtual, so film and music submissions will also be available for submission, and the theme is Roots and Branches. The boys swim team had a fantastic run at state this past weekend. Kyle Hopewell won 3rd in the 100 butterfly, Carter Sullivan 7th in the 50 and 8th in the 100 freestyle. The medley team of Austin Siebert, Keegan Toll, Kyle Hopewell, and Carter Sullivan placed 8th place and broke their school record. And also the 200 freestyle medley team of Austin Siebert, Charlie Jacobs, Kyle Hopewell, and Carter Sullivan placed 12th and broke their own previous school record, so that's very exciting. Our show choir also had amazing performances in Wisconsin this past weekend. Blue Vibrations, our JV show choir, won 1st in the prep division. Our varsity show choir, Central Singers Incorporated, won Grand Champs with the Best Vocal Award, and Drax Tremlow from Central Singers Incorporated won Best Male Soloist 2nd week in a row, along with our pit band, Pit Nation, won the Best Band Award. Also, students at Central are awarded Devil Dollars by teachers when they demonstrate giving effort, respecting all, involving themselves, and or being timely. Devil Dollars will now be drawn throughout the week in a raffle for small prizes. And on Friday, students have the chance to win gift cards and other prizes. There's a new club at Central called the Special Olympics Unified Club, connecting general education students with special education students. This gives general education students the opportunity to help plan, lead, and participate in activities with students with special needs, promoting inclusivity throughout the school. And finally, applications for the TEDx Youth event hosted at our school's Performing Arts Center on April 6th are going to be due this Friday, February 18th. A call for speakers has been posted not only within the district, but to colleges such as St. Ambrose and Augustana. So we're hopefully going to get like a wide range of applicants for an exciting event. Thank you.
Thank you, student board members. We love hearing all the things that are going on. I would greatly appreciate it if some of the other administrators would get their student board members here. It's been several meetings that we haven't had any representation from two of the high schools. It's a little disappointing for us, but thank you all for coming out and being engaged. We do appreciate that. Board reports. Are there any board reports? Director Beck?
Well, I was stuck at home sick for a week, but I was able to enjoy the Central Show Choir performance at Sudlow because my inside source sent some videos, and it was unbelievable. It was really cool to see the live band, the dancing, the singing, but also how excited the 7th and 8th graders were to watch the performance. They really enjoyed it as well. And so I know that all of our show choirs are fantastic, and I'm never surprised anymore when I hear about all the awards that they win. It was an amazing performance.
Director Hayes?
I went to the winter concert last week at North with the orchestra and the choral group, which was really nice. Today I went over to Eisenhower and was with Bonnie and her group over there, and I was just telling the story of I had one class that I really was interested in, but I had to abort that right away for unforeseen circumstances. But we'll try another school and see if I can figure out what that was. But it was really exciting over there to see how the littles, they just caught on so well. They were kindergartners in first grade and reading and sounding out. It was different sessions with different groups on different levels. It was just really exciting to see how engaged they were in that program. And now I'm excited for 3 years to pass to see how this affects our literacy scores, to just see these kindergartens just sounding out words and reading, basically. I also last week had a workshop with the IASB for superintendent's evaluation, and that was an hour and a half, really informative information in there. And I think with the help of the ISB that we are really, as a district, light years above some of the other districts, things that they were just speaking of in this workshop, that we've been doing them, and it was just kind of nice to hear how they've already taught us these skills and others are just learning to start utilizing them.
Thank you. Any other board reports? Director Poston?
President Gosa and I were at Monroe this afternoon with Bonnie Acey and her group and Mr. Driscoll. Got to see the early literacy in action, and again, just impressed with our staff and the work that they put into the early literacy. They have the students engaged, a lot of enthusiasm, and also there was also a lot of enthusiasm at the end of the day at school because of Valentine's Day, and everybody was having a party. So
Thank you. Any other board reports? I was supposed to be at Eisenhower this morning, but I got tied up with some other stuff. So I wasn't able to make that one because I would have loved to seen that. And like Director Poshin had said, we were at not Eisenhower, but Monroe. It was just awesome to go into the different classrooms and seeing all the kids engaged and anticipating what the teacher was going to do and things like that. So I have no doubt that we do everything that we can in this district to help with early literacy. But the other ask is parents need to make sure they get their kids to school, because when they miss out on that stuff, they can't blame us for everything if your kid's not there learning. I know that's a huge hurdle that a lot of our buildings go over and things like that. And I know there's a lot of programs in place to help get kids to school, but parents need to be accountable getting their kids to school learning this stuff, because if you miss a day or two, you're getting further and further behind. But again, it was awesome to see the kids engaged in all that. And then I was at the North High Show Choir event, and I got to watch all the groups from Central, West, and North. It was an awesome day. I think they were there from like 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night because my daughter was helping out with that stuff. So it was a long day, a lot of talented kids in our district, and I love attending those events. Any other board reports? Seeing none, we will move on to communications. Open forum. I should record myself saying this and just play a recorder. Open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak, please fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The form is available in hard copy for in-person attendees or on the school board page of the district website for those who want to participate virtually. Virtual participants must email their request to Brenda T. at tbren@davenportschools.org by 3 p.m. on the day of the board meeting. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. Iowa Open Meetings laws prohibit action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president may set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. Are there any open forums? No virtual either. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move that the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Potts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
Director Postion?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director Beck?
I move the board approve the following resolution. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the treasurer, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of January 19th, 2022 through February 8th, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Hayes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
Director Postion?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Superintendent report.
None at this time.
Committee reports. Director Beck?
So I kind of have two because they're working together. So as part of the policy committee, one of the policies that we are reviewing is the educational philosophy of the district policy. And part of that policy typically includes the district mission and vision statements. And so the policy committee took the idea to the LCAC, the Local School Improvement Advisory Committee, which I also happen to be on, and Director Gordon is on, and presented a potential pathway for revisiting the district mission and vision statements using the Local School Improvement Advisory Committee as sort of our community input part of that. And so we made a presentation I made a presentation on Tuesday, and then we'll be gathering input for how they think we should proceed at our next meeting, which will be in a month for the LCAC. And also the LCAC heard the same sort of a stripped down version of the ESSER presentation that we got last week from Bill Schnaden. So the community's got some information on how those monies are being spent, and they already jumped off with brainstorming ideas for how to make sure that we can use those dollars most efficiently and creatively. So that's both a policy committee update and an LCAC committee update.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Potts, you want to give an update on long-range facilities plan?
That's Director Foster.
Director Potts.
You said
Did I? Director Potts, would you please give an update?
I believe you said Pottsgen.
That's what I said, yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah, I just mixed the two.
on the facilities?
Yes.
Well, we had a facilities meeting last Friday and just basically reviewed what we had reviewed the prior week in preparation for the 28th. Our 28th meeting, our regular board meeting, is going to be pretty much devoted to updating the board on what's been transpiring so far with the committees that have been working. The last meeting was at Walcott, and then there'll be another meeting prior to at Sudlow this month, and then we'll be, and as I say, the lion's share of our board meeting, other than our routine business, will be taken up with that information.
Thank you, Director Potts.
Well, you're welcome.
Along those lines about the long-range facilities plan, I think we were just coming back into town from Des Moines, and Superintendent Schneckloff, myself, and Director Poshin stopped out just to kind of observe how it went. And then towards the end, then I talked kind of like you did to let them know, you guys are doing all the work. It was kind of nice because we were able to, they were saying, there's a lot of different factors they had to consider and things like that. And I was like, welcome to a day in the board on all the things that we have to take account for when we have to take action on something. So it was kind of nice they're kind of seeing that. And it'll be good to hear the feedback, because I think we have some of the actual parents on the committee that are going to come to the meeting on the 28th to talk with us as well. And I don't, Director Pasha, do you have anything you wanted to add with observing that, or?
No, I think it was nice to see it in action and see the people get involved. But it'll be interesting to see what they come up with on the 28th. So.
And then Director Poshin, myself, and Superintendent Schneckloff went up to the Capitol for the legislative advocacy to do the ISB's Day on the Hill. I do want to thank Representative Poshin, because he actually took us on a tour further than we've ever been in there, and had legislators come out to talk to us and things like that. He was very helpful with that. I think we spent quite a bit of time with our local legislators, and just to promote for the SSA and stuff like that. So we had good conversations. And then, yeah, I don't think we got back till in town till 5 or 6 that night. So I don't know if either one of you want to add anything to that, but I do appreciate you all taking the time to go up there with us and stuff.
It was incredible to have Representative Poston. It was direct access, and I'm incredibly proud of our school board members for the way they advocated, for the way they relayed what's important to the community. And I will tell you, overall, the narrative, the conversations that were going back and forth between all the legislators was keep working hard. We see you trying to make a difference. And that narrative is starting to turn. We have a lot of work to do, obviously, but it was the highlight, the positive note for me was they recognize how hard this group of people's working. And it was a highlight. And we talked to every one of our elected officials that were in our area. I believe we got an opportunity to talk to every one of them. And we shared our priorities. The IASB did an outstanding job preparing us. So we had some data, some information. We put down, we fine-tuned what we wanted to share. And we got an opportunity to talk to every single one of them. So it was a very, very beneficial day, and it was an affirming day, and something we also came back and realized how we're going to fine tune our own legislative advocacy starting in the middle of January. What numbers we're going to look up, different presentations to our local electeds, and so it was a very beneficial day. Thank you for asking.
No, I just echo what Superintendent Snakeloff said. As far as the IASB, I mean, they did a wonderful job, prepping the school board members. And again, I just can't say enough about the benefits that we've gotten from the IASB. And just one other thing, on Monday, we're going to have a legislative breakfast. And this is in lieu of the bus trip that normally is taken there, but with access to some of the building there is not available for large groups. So we've decided to go this route. It begins at 7:30. We're going to we've invited legislators to be there. We need students, especially students from the high schools, to be in attendance. I've already talked to some of our student board members as far as getting hold of some kids to be there. And I don't know, is Brenda, are you contacting principals or yes? Okay. And so it should last till about 10 o'clock. And I think Governor Reynolds was invited to be online with us, but wasn't available. So we're having, who are we having?
Secretary of State.
Secretary of State will be in attendance. So anyway, we need some students there. So thank you.
Thank you. I was going to put a plug in for that. Brenda has sent out several emails to our building principals. So again, building principals, I know you all watch this, get the students here. It's hard for us to get legislators to take time to do this stuff, and they like to interact with the students. So do your best. We need the students here. Any other committee reports? If you got anything for finance?
We'll have Finance Committee on Friday afternoon. And Kevin, what's on the agenda?
Auditor's report.
We'll be going through a couple things. One of them will be the audit report for last fiscal year and our key measures report and monthly report for January.
All right, we'll move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 10.01?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the changes in health insurance carrier for the UMR to Wellmark and a change in prescription provider from Elixir to Med 1 effective April 1, 2022.
Second.
Seconded by Director Passion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes? Director Passion?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
What was that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.02?
Mr. President,
Director Potts?
I move the board approve the administration's recommendation that the lowest responsive bid for Byte Speed in the amount of $84,110 to replace 18 security system servers.
Thank you. Is there a
Second. Sorry.
Whoa. Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Klein-Jerome?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.03?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes?
I move that the academic calendar for the current school year has been revised to make up for lost instructional time on January 3rd, 2021. Students will receive instruction on April 18th, previously planned as a no-school day.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Beck. Is there any discussion? Director Gordon?
Yeah, I've heard from a handful of staff members who have a few concerns about this. Is it okay if I speak to that now?
Yes, discussion.
Okay. It's been mentioned that I had a few staff members say that they wish that they had been polled or questioned about this ahead of time so that they would have known that this was a possibility. I've had other staff mention that lots of people already have had trips planned for this weekend, which would potentially increase the need for substitutes, which is further stressing an already stressed situation. I've had teachers tell me this is literally the only other day they have off between spring break and summer, which any staff person knows is the longest stretch ever in a school. And I've had the recommendation be placed that maybe they could do away with their hour outs on Wednesdays for a period of time instead, if we are open to other suggestions. And then I've had the suggestion that if we decide that we're going to do this, that maybe in the future going forward, we make it a standing decision that this will be our plan to handle snow days, to do away with other days off. So that's just, I wanted to put that out in the air.
Totally agree with you that in the future, you'll notice in the next calendar that this is marked that way. The Wednesdays are very difficult right now. We have a tiered plan where the Wednesdays will go away, but the corrective actions that we need to put in place, our Wednesdays are vital for that. The second piece is that we understand that there's going to be hurdles to cross on the 18th. Right now, we get out of school on a Friday, and an additional day puts us across that weekend, and that was a huge concern for a lot of the teams that we talked to. So it was like picking which one do we want. We understand your concerns are very valid. We have the same concerns, and we talked about that at length at our cabinet meeting. Dr. Klipsch is leading the calendar discussion on this issue, and we took this to all of our union groups, vetted it, worked through it, and so we agree that in the future it is marked as a day. So this will be a day that's marked. We also know that we're going to have to individually work with staff members, and we understand that, and we're prepared to do that. So all of your concerns are valid. We do have a plan to work through those, and understand that they will be difficult. And in the future, it is placed on the calendar as a marker for that as well. Thank you for those concerns. Jake, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I would just repeat everything you said. On when we do the next year's calendar, it actually does signify that, and so that is one piece there. And we did take this through those different groups to get feedback as was requested. Like, hey, have we heard it from everybody? I remember President Gosa mentioned that, and so since the last meeting, we have done that.
Did you have a question, Director Beck? Or?
One of them was answered about the different groups. I know there was some question as to whether the day that was lost for teachers and students was also lost to all staff, like whether some of the custodians and other people were working that day already. And so I just wanted to know if that was resolved, and if so, have we worked out financially how that would work? Are we giving them an extra day's pay, or how's that going to work?
You want a microphone?
They already worked that day. They'll be there anyway. So the day we had off, they were at work, so it doesn't affect anything for those people. Okay. They're year-round employees anyway.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you for answering those questions. It is a double-edged sword, because if we were going one day later, we would get crucified for that. So I remember last year, because we had to go 1 week extra into the summer. Any other discussion? Director Gordon.
So winter's not over yet. We could potentially have another snow day. Is there another plan, or do we just go into Monday at that point?
We can go into Monday, but what we will look at is very similar to what we're going to look at on the 28th meeting with the Walcott, where we can look at extending days, where we will go into looking at Wednesdays. And then worst case scenario is go past, get into that Monday. Obviously, we are about making up the time for our students in the best way, and so that was a good way to do that. In the future, I believe we're banking in some hours to assist with that.
And actually, with the 18th, we do bank 6 additional hours. So we then would provide flexibility for 3 more 2-hour early dismissal or late starts if we needed to without impacting anything. It's when we go another 2-hour early dismissal late start that we would then have a contingency plan for either Wednesdays or adjusting bell schedules a little bit. So we have thought of that.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Beck?
Yes.
Director Gordon?
Yes.
Director Potts?
Yes.
Director Poston?
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 10.04?
Mr. President.
Oh. Go for it, Ken.
Was that Director
This
Potts?
must be a popular one.
Director Poston.
Move the board approve the 3-phase COVID incentive plan to be paid in 2 active employees over the next year as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Director Klein Jerome. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Director Poston.
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Gordon.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Did I not call on you? Director Potts.
I'm in favor of giving away federal money.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Okay. It's been a long day.
You probably thought I was posturing.
I said I thought Director Potts made the motion.
P1 and P2.
My vote is yes, motion carries. I apologize.
That's okay. Takes more than that to bug me.
It's been a long day. Discussion items. Oh, I gotta read all this, huh?
Public hearings.
All right. We will now hold a public hearing on this proposal, which was published in the Quad City Times on February 9th, 2022. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further board discussion on this matter? I did. Brenda, did I do that? Did I miss that? No, you're fine. Director Beck.
I was just going to say, for anyone who's listening and wondering what this is whether we do 180 days or 1,080 hours in a school year. And we have, for as far as I know, for ages done the 1,080 hours. And so this isn't changing anything. We just have to discuss it.
Thank you. Discussion 11.02, a public hearing and discuss for the start date for the 2022-2023 school year. On Friday, April 10th, 2015, do I need to say all that? Signed into law the requirement that beginning with the 2015-16 school year, all Iowa school districts and accredited non-public schools begin classes no earlier than August 23rd each year. As a result, administration is proposing a start date for the 22-23 school year on Tuesday, August 23rd, 2022. We will now hold a public hearing on this proposal, which was published in the Quad City Times on February 9th, 2022. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone. State your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Any other further board discussion on this matter? Seeing none, this matter will be brought before the board for a vote at the next regular meeting on February 28th. And now we'll move on to discussion item 11.03, the 2022-2023 academic calendar. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you. I'll turn this over to Jake as he has been leading the committee, but a part of that committee is everyone you see over there, including members of HR and Jamie's team. So, Jake, I'll turn this over to you to discuss this.
Yeah, so as you can see, first off, going back to our the previous comment about this year's adjusted calendar, that we're going to jump right down to April 7th date, and it specifies in red there that's a potential makeup day. So that is where we put that in there in order to avoid the same issue that we're coming up against right now. So that was addressed in that. What you're going to find in here is again, 2 weeks for spring break, and this was, again, we talked to our labor management group about this with some feedback in addition to reaching out to all of our other employee and bargaining groups. We're providing four days of in-service before a school year this year. For next year is this in proposal, which has come from some feedback through our district staff who want to get in front of teachers to kind of front load on all the important things going on in the year. let's see here, where another one of our goals, again, based on some feedback, was to avoid going late into the summer, which we've had some times that we've had to do that. And so what you'll see here is, again, that the last student day is proposed as June 1st with the last teacher or staff attendance day of June 2nd. And I guess I would, I can kind of go through different pieces here, but I would open this up if there are specific questions or things that stick out to you about why we're, doing things the way that we're doing here. But this was with feedback from different groups when we put this together.
Director Beck.
I did get an email. I think we probably all got it, but it did spark some. I had the same questions. So why do elementary students only get one conference in the fall semester and everybody else gets multiple conferences during the year?
Yeah, actually, there's some contract language on that, and I don't know, not going to put Jamie on the spot, but I have heard that same question, and that it does say that conferences will be held for 12 hours during conference week for those elementaries, and there will be no school on Thursday and Friday of that conference week for elementaries. So I know that was a question came up about why do we have that November 3rd and 4th off, and that is in our contract to have it that way. That we could, again, we'd have to discuss with our
The contract language reads, the actual staff gets to vote whether or not they want to split that and put it in the second half of the school year.
Have they voted on that every time? Like every year they vote on it?
Individual school does that. Yeah. I don't know the exact contract language, and it's putting Jamie on the spot, but
Yes, every sorry, but I can answer this.
Karen?
Every building in the elementary votes that they can carry 3 hours to the spring if they so choose. They have to vote on it every year. It is up to the teachers, not anybody else in the building, to make that decision. I don't know. I would say the majority do not, though, because they want to see all parents, and trying to get it in a short amount of time in the fall is a little difficult. So most of them do that, but that is up to the teachers to make that decision.
Okay, that explains a couple of things. I guess, from a monitoring standpoint, wouldn't it make sense to monitor?
That would be a question that they should ask their leadership, because clearly they don't read their contract books. So I would defer them back to their DEA leadership.
Well, and my thought always was, you can meet with a parent anytime. Parent has a concern, feel free, come in, call, we'll schedule a meeting. But I don't necessarily need 3 hours in the spring because I'm not going to see every parent.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well,
They're
that's a
gonna meet with
question
them.
for future. Okay. My other question was, actually, I'll let somebody else go. I got to find it, so I lost my train of thought.
Director Kleindrum.
And I know it's hard to schedule this, but when you're teaching the block scheduling, 43 days versus 46, 46, 43 does make it a problem. If somehow in the future it could be a more balanced block schedule, because 3 extra days are more than just 3 days because of the hours put into it.
Absolutely. And there was a little bit of thinking behind that, is that if April 7th became a school day, which unfortunately with our weather could happen, that adds another day. And then if we have to add other times on at the end of the year, that's why there's a little bit of not flexibility, but if we did have to build in time, it usually would come in that 4th term, which is where that piece would come in there. And instead of adding additional time into the 4th term, which would then balance it off the other way. So I understand what you're saying, though.
Any other questions? Director Beck?
So I guess this may just fit in with contract language, but I always feel like, no school November. And I know we obviously can't move Thanksgiving or Veterans Day. Those are days that are mandated, but I guess I feel like the fall has a lot of breaks in it, and we do have spring break, which is one big chunk. And I know it's been appreciated that we hold our spring break at the same time as the other schools in the area now. So, you know, it wouldn't make sense to move that. But it does, kind of going back to what Director Gordon was saying, it does seem like a very long stretch, you know, in the spring compared to the number of breaks, little breaks that students seem to get in the fall. So I don't know if that's something maybe we can visit in the future, you know, maybe help eliminate the imbalance in the block scheduling if that's an issue. Just something to think about.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we will move on to subject 11.04, policies for board second discussion. I'll turn it over to Director Beck, the chair of the policy committee.
Thank you, Director Gosa, President Gosa. So the first one we have is policy 210.02, which establishes our regular meeting dates and days and times. And this one, because we changed our meetings to 5:30 p.m., was out of date. So we are changing the time there. And that's basically the only change. We discussed this already once, so this is the second discussion. And unless anything changes, you can plan on having this to vote on at our next regular meeting.
Do you have questions?
I do want to discuss it.
I'm sorry, what?
I do want to discuss that.
Okay.
5:30 is not working so well for me. I would really like to push it later. It is very hard for me to get here at 5:30. I'm making it happen, but the 5 o'clocks, when there's things scheduled beforehand, that's basically impossible. I'm really struggling with that. It would help me out greatly if we could push it back a half an hour again.
I'll say that I also have trouble getting here at 5 o'clock. I teach late and I have meetings. And so when we have early things, 5:30 I can make work, but when we have early things, it's hard for me to get from East Moline to here for something at 5 o'clock. Today, fortunately, the scheduling gods canceled our photograph, and that made my life a lot easier. But so just something to think about, but I'll make whatever work.
Is there any other discussion on this? Oh, you're chairing it. Go ahead.
I was just going to maybe make a suggestion that perhaps we set aside some time for a dedicated discussion to scheduling rather than trying to cram it in with a policy when we're actually to discuss, you know, really when the meetings, because this is really just about the policy, not when our meetings should occur. So I don't know if, right, the policy just reflects what we do. So I don't know if we want to set up a time, if the agenda committee can find a time for us to have a discussion again about meeting times. And then we can update the policy to reflect what we decide.
Yeah, we can kick that back. I think that'll be like the third discussion we've had on it, but we can do that.
Okay.
Certainly.
But for now, the policy's going to, hopefully, we're going to vote on this policy next week because this is what we are doing right now. And we can update the policy if we change our meeting times in the future, if that's okay. Or we can just take the time out of the policy and say we will meet sometime between 5 and 6, 7, 8.
Mr. President, it would seem to me that if when this comes up on the 28th, that any policy, when it's up for action, can be amended.
Mm-hmm.
You hit your mic.
Any policy, when it's up for action, can be amended. So I would think if there would be any concerns or a need for any discussion, it could take place at that time when there's a motion on the floor dealing with this policy.
That works.
That's what we were just sidebarring.
Yeah, no, that actually works. That works really well. So we've got it. We'll discuss when we have our vote. Okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, to me, I'll make anything work, but if it's, a problem because of a work schedule, then we probably need to accommodate. So, but again, I can go either way.
Thank you. All right, so we've got our plan of action on that. The other policy for second discussion is our policy 803.02, which is the lease, sale, or disposal of school district buildings and sites. We have discussed this a couple of times, at least once in this body, and then we've also had a couple of discussions in policy committee meetings about what language to use so that we have the maximum flexibility and meet the desires of all of the board members. So this is what we've come up with right now. So I'd open it up to discussion or comments from anyone. Director Poston?
Well, as I've stated many times before, I feel quite strongly about this, that any sale of property should be to the highest bidder. So I think this just needs to be simplified, and all assets of the district should be sold to the highest bidder. When you look back on this and some of the decisions that were made, I think there's too much interpretation here, and I think we'll go back to past mistakes that have been made. I also think that by not selling to the highest bidder is a slap in the face to our taxpayers. So I just feel quite strongly that the wording needs to be changed here, and it should be that all assets of the school district need to be sold to the highest bidder.
President Gosa?
So I understand where you're going with that, so I'll throw a scenario out to you. Say you go to sell a building, someone wants to buy it for $500,000, but they want to set on it for 2 years to make sure they can get credits and everything while we have to maintain and maintenance that building. You have someone that comes in for $450,000, but they'll buy it right now and take it off our hands. If you say what you want to say, you've just hindered us on that. If that's what, because that's a real scenario. I mean, we ran into that with, I'm trying to think of who would have been here, with the old ASC and a few other buildings. People want things put in that, well, you got to wait this long to sell it and things like that while we have to maintain that building. So I understand what you're saying, but I just want to throw a scenario at you, because that could very well be what happens, because multiple buildings that we went to sell, that's one of the things. Well, let me check in and see if I can get tax credits and things like that, and then they want you to set on it.
That's easily solved. You just put a time frame in. Building sold at
but if the
such and such time.
reads the highest bidder, they'll say they're the highest bidder, and they'll come back and sue us. I'm just throwing scenarios out there for you, because I get what you're saying 100%, but that stuff happens all the time.
Yeah. I just don't want to sell a building for $30,000 when we could have got $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 for it. Okay, again, that's a slap in the face of our taxpayers. Our taxpayers deserve better.
Director Potts?
I think when we discussed this on its first go-around, there was some suggestion of wording that would say highest responsible bidder, which may provide a vehicle to navigate through your scenario, but still maintain that we get the most bang for our buck. Because we use that language when we accept bids for services, the highest, or building projects. It would seem to me it would work the same way.
So go ahead, Director Klein-Jerome, did you have something?
I just have a question, like, how do we determine what's responsible? Would that include a timeline then? So the highest responsible bidder that can buy it within 2 months? Or, I mean, does responsible come with that time limit? I don't know the answer to that. And then the other thing is, okay, if I want to buy X school and make it a bar in a neighborhood, is that responsible? And again, I don't have an answer, but are we the responsible party to say that would be bad for the neighborhood? I'm not sure where responsible puts us.
Director Poston.
That would be up to the city. I mean, that goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's no need of us getting involved with that. That's a city issue. That would be taken care of, again, by Planning and Zoning.
Okay. But then what about the time? By saying responsible, does that allow us to put a time that, okay, you better get your ducks in a row in 2 months, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We'd have to ask somebody who would know. But it would seem to me people sell things in time frames now. You have so much time to have a closing, to close on your property or whatever. I just think the language is important to just ensure that we don't find ourselves the subject to editorials again in the paper.
Sure, I agree. Do we need to put a timeline in here then, or do we do it when we're selling?
Before we get to that, just to kind of play devil's advocate, let's say a charter school organization wanted to come in and buy a building and put it in. That's not in the best interest of our community. That's pulling dollars away from our students. I would not feel comfortable selling a building that was going to directly impact my students, our students' foundation aid. That being said, before we get too far down this time frame, there's no law. So I reached out to the IASB policy person. There's no law that any property has to be sold. There's no law in the state that says property has to be sold to the highest bidder. She made a point that not all property is sold. And so if we have a policy that property will be sold to the highest bidder, then we can't donate things like old uniforms and, a sliver of land that's good for a driveway and nothing else, right? And so we have to be really clear what we're talking about selling. And then we need to make sure that we specify that. Her suggestion was that we could include language that when a property is sold, preference is given to the highest responsible bidder. But she cautioned us against saying will be sold to X, Y, or Z for a lot of the things that we've been mentioning, timeframes, who's buying, those kinds of things.
You kind of got an idea of what everybody's looking for.
I haven't heard from Director Hayes yet, actually.
Can we reach out to, is it Dick Davidson? With Lane and
Lane and
Waterman?
Waterman,
And make sure we get the wording correctly so that he's good with it and it'll work for us and get what the consensus is. And do you want to wait?
Well, we may not get to consensus, but.
Well, I mean, he can work something out. I mean, you've got an idea on what everyone's kind of looking for, and then because he's the
like to go around and
he's
kind of
like
just
the
get
real
it.
estate attorney. Is that what his role is for us? Yeah.
I'd like to go around and just get sort of an idea. So number one, we need to make sure that we are, when we're talking about highest bidder or preference going to a highest bidder, we're talking about actual property, real estate, not general property. Because we don't want to I don't think we want to hamstring ourselves from being able to donate things that aren't necessarily a building or something like that, right? And then,
But most other stuff, I think most other stuff we just we have a sale at the Voc Center. Well, it's not the Voc Center, but we have a sale out at the warehouse
Right.
where people can come and buy stuff. We put a price on it and people buy it.
Right. But we also don't want to limit ourselves. If we choose to donate, you know, then we need to be able to do that too, I think. So I guess I'll start with Director Hayes and go around and kind of just get your feeling for how you want to proceed.
I guess I'm okay with how it is, but I think what really, really disturbs me in all of this is we've basically given two buildings away for $1. And this $30,000 has just really put things in a total uproar. So rather than something like that happen again, whatever the language is, I'm okay with it. Just, you know, I know we have no say in what the individual will do with the building, but I do agree with President Gosa. We had someone that literally was waiting for, they needed a couple years to wait on, you know, those tax credit, and we had to continue with the upkeep of the building in that time, and we were putting a lot of money into it, so, you know, it was given to someone else. So I feel that's very important.
Okay. All right. Director Poston, do you want to?
I mean, I've said, you know, how I feel about it. You know, you can put a time frame on there. I mean, most sales like this of large real estate is, you know, at closing, you get your money. You know, it's as simple as that.
All right. Director Klein-Jim. Sorry.
And when you said the $1 sale, I never thought about that, but we have sold like the Roosevelt Center to the city for $1. So that wouldn't have been the highest bidder. So I don't want to put in language that would preclude us from doing something like that. And didn't we, the Armory and us, we just swapped? I mean, we didn't sell anything. So I just want to make sure that the language does not tie us into something that we hadn't thought about.
Director Gordon, your thoughts?
I don't have anything to add right now.
Okay. And Director Potts, anything else?
I just feel we have a fiduciary responsibility as a board to dispose of district property for the maximum value that we can return to the people.
And President Gosa.
I think however we do it, we need to have contingencies built in to do the, it's a certain amount of a time frame, different things like that. I don't see that being an issue. And I understand where everyone's coming from and everything like that. And then at the same time too, I always take into account the effect on the community as well. I get it. Everybody wants the biggest bang for their buck. I totally understand that. But at the same time, you don't want a building being dilapidated for years and years in an area. But we definitely need to get some type of contingencies in there for that stuff. Wasn't there a bill passed by Robbie Smith, or he presented something on the sale of buildings? So there's a procedure to do it even. So that should probably be referenced in there somewhere, I would assume.
It would be included in the it would be included in the ISB template because they've got all the up-to-date legal references.
I thought he did that like a couple years ago or something.
And I reached out just last week to get feedback from the ISB policy person. So, okay, I think I know what we'll bring next week for a vote. And you guys can get in touch with Dick Davidson just to make sure that.
What I recommend we do is that you and I get together, relay the board's feedback and concerns. I have some ideas about how the board is doing that with you, so that way we can collaborate doing that. I think the very valid point of land swapping is because you might be able to get an equal value out of that, and in our long range facility plan, that might be necessary in terms of where we may be building. And so Dick will have some some insight on how best to move forward. So I will be more than happy to help you call him and connect with Siobhan and try and put something together.
Okay. All right, cool.
Real quick on that, do you want to take that to a vote next week, or do you want to do a discussion on it to make sure?
I think we can.
If
bring-
is everyone good? Will they revise it and vote on it next week? And if you don't like it, you vote it down, or do you want to have a discussion to make sure it's what you want? I just want a consensus.
It'll be 2 weeks before we vote on it, but
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I think it'll
You're
be.
good with voting on it? Okay. Are we done with that part?
Yeah.
All right, we will move on to subject 11.05, policies for the board's discussion. I'll turn it back over to Director Beck again.
So I had to step out for some discussion on some of these, so I will probably ask Director Klein-Jerome if she can fill in. But the first couple, all of these policies are basically either in sort of classroom management, and then some in food and nutrition services, and some transportation things. So a lot of them are things that there's not a whole lot for us to put input in. They're policies we have to have. So the first one here is policy 604.07, and for some reason mine are not in any kind of order on my screen here. Let's see, that one is called dual enrollment, and this is referring not to the term dual enrollment as we use it in our district, because we have the North Associate's degree program. When we talk about dual enrollment students, we typically are talking about students who are enrolled in that associate's degree and at North High School. What the state is referring to in here are students who are homeschooled, and so when they can take courses at the school, at the public school, if they're homeschooled. And so we simply changed the title to make it clear that that's the distinction there. Okay, so the second one is for online courses. And this one was written pre-pandemic, and so we discussed it for a while, trying to make sure that what we were capturing was sort of how online courses meet our needs now as a district. And so we were trying to make sure that we allow students to take online coursework if it's important for their academic progress, or necessary for medical and health reasons, or courses we don't offer and they're very accelerated. They want to take French 4 or 5 or something like that, but not make it open to an entire. We're not saying you can just take an entire online program and that would meet course requirements. So that's really what we were trying to capture there. So we took out the maximum number of credits, because knowing that in the pandemic, some students choose to go online for health reasons, and we have the technology to do that. And so we didn't want to limit the number of courses they could take online. That's kind of the main thing here. The other one was talking about tuition, textbooks, rentals, and school supplies. In the past, because these were sort of exceptional circumstances, the policy had stated that parents would pick that up. We decided it was probably more appropriate to treat it as any other course that a student would be taking at this point. So any of the stuff that we would provide for a student taking an in-person class would go along with one of these, unless it was a summertime course. That's a little bit different. So this is for taking your school year courses. Questions? Director Potts.
Is there any estimated what the cost of that is?
No, I think, so basically when we do Edgenuity or something like that, all of that's included in the package. So there's not really any, as far as I know, not a model for any extra expenses at this point. It's all typically packaged. But we can double check on that before we vote on it. So we will make a note to double check that there's not some kind of scenario that we're not thinking about before we do that. All right. Okay, so the next one is class size grouping. That's
Director
six.
Beck.
Oh, I'm sorry, Director Gordon.
No, that's okay. Does that mean that a student has to use Edgenuity since that's what the district is using right now, or can they find courses outside of that if it's not offered? I didn't understand that.
It is under specific circumstances, and so it's actually it can be individualized. So it's under the purview of the superintendent and that's an administrative regulation to determine how this is carried out. So one of the circumstances that a student could get graduation credit for is taking a course that's not offered at their high school.
Right.
But by making the policy written like this, it says the express approval of the principal shall be obtained before the student enrolls, right? And so I can't just go sign up for some random online course and then count it towards graduation. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So the next one is class size grouping. And this one is, I'll wait for Brenda to pull it up there. Basically, the board can review class sizes and whether class grouping will take place. So that, I think, probably doesn't really happen very often anymore. But, you know, if you need a second and third grade split classroom or something like that, you can do it. Basically, it's just gives us an option to make our classrooms fit the needs of our students. Okay. The next one is on school ceremonies and observances. And this one is basically up to date, basically saying that we have school ceremonies and observances that are tradition and custom of that building or sort of generally understood, things like the Pledge of Allegiance, although we know that that's in law now. But it's used as an example. These include but are not limited to observance of holidays, things like that, by programs and performances, and basically that we'll have a flag at every school. It's kind of a standard policy there. So we only adjusted it to include kindergarten and also students and staff who wish to not participate in said activities, rather than just students. Okay. The next one is on animals in the classroom, and we had some discussion on this because it was confusing as to whether this applied to, you know, the class hamster or a therapy dog or something like that. I'm sorry, am I traumatizing? But basically, this is not related to therapy animals, and those are under their own specific policy. So basically, the principal has kind of final say in the building, and that's where we left that. So again, this does not include any therapy or support animals. Those are covered under a different policy. Director Gordon?
So how are student and staff allergies taken into consideration when it involves, like, I understand that it's up to the principal, but if the principal's not aware of allergies or is not like getting staff and student family input into whether or not there can be animals in the environment, like, what is being done to protect the people with allergies?
That's a great question, and I am going to defer to Superintendent Schneckloth because he would know the day-to-day way we manage this typically.
So usually there's some kind of note sent home, this animal's coming, or we're having a day of the farm, come to school. And so therefore the parents would communicate and also if there's a health plan on file about allergies, then the nurses are communicating that way. If the student's old enough, the student knows that they have allergies and they communicate that. If they're not, then it's usually done with some type of health plan in the nurse's office or communicated with that we're having an animal here if you have an issue with that animal or allergies, then it's usually communicated that way.
Currently, the two dogs that I'm aware of in the district are those whatever. Their fur is not an allergen, if that makes sense. I think they're something doodles. Now I'm trying to be an expert on dogs all of a sudden, right? But they're the kind of sheepadoodles or whatever they are, but their fur is not.
This policy is more like the rabbit in the classroom, things like that.
Right. So I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble here, but I know that there are circumstances that are not hypoallergenic animals that are dogs roaming buildings, and staff is not always given the opportunity to object to that in a way that would make them comfortable.
So when that happens, we intervene. And this has happened. I was the 504 ADA coordinator for many years, and this has happened where there were allergy instances, and so the administration has to work particularly hard to make sure those schedules don't cross for all students. And I think for the most part that we've been able to manage that. There have been some staff-to-staff issues where the therapy dog comes to the staff meeting where there are people who are allergic, and then we just have to work through that. And we take it all the way to an HR angle, if at all possible. So, yes, there are some dogs. I think we do have a couple of labs that are not, or have in the past had some dogs that were not of the doodle mindset. But it sounds like right now in our building, all we have are the hyperallergenic kind, because I know that we have in the past had dogs that have had that dander.
Other questions? Okay. The next one is student field trips and excursions. This one is basically standard boilerplate. Sometimes people take field trips and excursions, and we, it's typically up to the principal, but if a field trip is to go beyond the Quad Cities metro area, then it requires higher level approval. We put in superintendent or superintendent's designee so that people can go on more distant trips. We did change the language. It said outside the state, and I thought, well, there goes Moline. So we changed it to Quad Cities metro area because that's sort of generally understood as acceptable range. So that's that policy. Again, it's not really changing anything that we already do. Okay. Go ahead.
Would Chicago be considered the Quad City metro area?
No.
So the superintendent would have to approve field trips to Chicago?
Or designee. So the way administrative regulations work?
Des Moines? No.
I don't know. He could write in a regulation that says, I cede all decisions about Des Moines and Chicago to the building
Ames?
principal.
All states in Ames. Opus is in Ames.
Sure. Superintendent or superintendent's designee. He can say to everybody, I don't have to decide.
I dare you to say no.
Anything else? Yeah, somebody's always going to find something.
No, I think What do we define as that
Yeah.
geographic?
Yeah.
We had that same conversation about, well, Des Moines is in it because it was in state, out of state, and the policy is written for a small town inside of Iowa, in the center part of Iowa. We just happen to be in the area where kids can go out of state and do very, very regularly. And so when we discussed this, we said, I understand that the field trips that are happening when they go to New York or things like that we need to get those approved and work through. So, but that's a good point.
And the beauty of administrative regulations is okay, the next one is insufficient classroom space. This is a mandated policy by Iowa's an open enrollment law, so we just suggest we adopt it as written. Okay. The next one is student guidance and counseling program. This is again another policy that is required that we have, and basically it says we will have some sort of counseling program. It does not require us to have a guidance counselor, although we do. This is written for districts of all different sizes, but basically we suggest that we adopt it as is because it covers all the situations that we might have. Okay, the next one is student health services. Again, this is a mandatory policy. This is basically that health services exist, and we have to decide. I think we left something out when the second paragraph there where it says superintendent in conjunction with I believe we're supposed to choose, or did we just decide to leave it? Oh, because it's got an et cetera. We'll develop administrative regulations, and it's a mandatory policy. However, the IASB suggests including language that the school district will annually notify parents of physical exams or screenings conducted on students except for vision, hearing, or scoliosis, because those are sort of standard done in the classroom already. So I guess I'd invite feedback on this one, and who would work with the superintendent to make that decision. Do we have a committee? Do we have a public health nurse? Do we have all of the above?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's why I think Karen,
I think I walked out right before.
this is why this one is as is, if I'm correct, right, Karen?
Yep. All right. Do you guys want to add in the statement that we will annually notify parents of exams or screenings except for that recommended?
I think we took this one as is.
Okay. All right, cool. I am going to hand it over to Director Klein-Jerome to kind of discuss the next couple. I apologize, but I'm also going to have to run out for a second. So I'll be back.
The next one is 710.01 on school nutrition program. We did not have the title in here, so we just added that in green. That is about the only change that was made on that. Questions? Okay. Next one is 710.02, free and reduced lunch price, meals eligibility. On the third line, the district shall annually notify all families of the availability, eligibility criteria. I think that's really the practice that they're doing now, is to let them know about it at the beginning of the school year, and when some new student comes in, they also are notified of our policy. I think that's really the only big change, other than, again, putting in the title of the Director of Food and Nutrition Services. Questions? Okay, policy 710.03, vending machines. We left it as is. It's a responsibility of the building principals to monitor the vending machines. I don't even know, do we still turn them off during certain times in the day? I thought that was weird, but okay. Anyway, it's left as is. Student transportation. It did say elementary 2 miles, but our policy has been students living more than 1.5 miles. So that was just inserted. That was the only change because it reflects what our policy is instead of the way they'd written it. Questions? The next one is 711.02, student conduct on school transportation. We took out how many, after 3 warnings or 4 warnings or however many warnings, we believe it should be, again, at the discretion of the building principal. Will have the authority to suspend transportation privileges of the student or impose other appropriate discipline. So there is not a, oh, you get 1 chance, but you got 2, and none of that. The building principal will have the authority on that. Questions? The next one, 711.03, student transportation for extracurricular activities. It just addresses the fact that we have activities going on and students get transported. And then at some schools, they also are, I know when we were at Walcott, after practice, they had a bus that ran the regular route. Questions? 711.05, transportation for non-resident and non-public school students. Again, it deals with non-public schools. We left it as is. Legally, we must do this. Questions? On 711.06, transportation of non-school groups. What we pulled out is within the state, transportation of non-school groups. Like, let's say the Golf Classic wanted to borrow our buses to transport them. Well, if we left within the state, then they couldn't because they're in Illinois. So we pulled that out of there.
Can I?
Questions?
Yeah, so this is one of the ones that, I'm sorry, I missed the discussion, but it's my understanding that we don't actually do we ever let other people outside of the district use our vehicles, vans, buses, whatever?
Well, it depends on when we own them and when we are leasing them.
I guess that would be my question. Is there ever like who gets to use school district vehicles? Do we ever allow somebody who's not a district employee to drive a vehicle that's a district vehicle?
I don't believe so. Are you talking vans or buses?
It doesn't matter. It's a district vehicle.
There are times when coaches, stuff like that, they may not be an employee of ours, but they're coaches. They may drive a van.
Okay. So under this situation here, are there situations, I mean, I know we technically don't own our buses, but is this, basically, I had a question about this before it came to policy. Is this opening us up to letting lots of different people use our vehicles, or is it going to change what we do? Is it?
Well, since I've been here, I don't think we've done anything like that, but I recall having a conversation about years ago when they had, they utilized the buses for potentially transporting people to a large golf event. Like,
yeah.
But I don't know that that's happened since I've been here.
Well, probably hasn't happened since we don't own the buses
Right.
versus if something would change and we would start owning the buses, it's good to have this policy in that we get to decide.
I guess I'm just wondering, do we need this policy if no one ever uses our vehicles but us anyway? Just trying to keep things pared down.
I think the direction the district is heading, this policy might be necessary.
You're walking on the fence.
All right. Well, we'll bring it back to policy committee maybe for a little bit further discussion. Do you want me to take back over, Karen, or you?
If you want it.
All right. The next one is school bus safety instruction, and it was changed to annually. And I actually was. I'm assuming you guys double checked with. We good?
Annually is good.
Okay. So that school bus safety occurs, instruction occurs, and plans, safety drills, things like that are done every year on our school buses. Okay. The next one is transportation in inclement weather. I will, if I remember correctly, this is, we won't. If we can't transport them safely, we won't.
Well, the big conversation with this is it used language that would require us to take in the voice of bus drivers, people. And I think it's a good suggestion, but that's not how our current operating procedures are. The bus drivers aren't out early on in the morning, so it didn't match what we were doing. So we changed it to match exactly what we were doing. And then the communication of it, we matched the communication with our procedures inside the district. Karen, does that sum that up?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, this one was an interesting one too, because we have to have a policy on transportation in inclement weather, but so that's mandatory, but what we do in that situation is not mandatory. We can decide how we want to do that, so. Okay. The last one is school bus passenger restraints. We are required by law to have a policy in place on this topic, and it applies even to districts who contract their busing services. And it says we will have a 3-point lap and shoulder belt. I'm assuming none of the, I know by law all school buses have to have that 3-point lap and shoulder belt after a certain date. Are they grandfathered in, or do we don't have to worry about that?
It's by date. Durham would take care of that, but it's
Okay.
by date. So if you buy a new bus, that needs to have the constraints and things like that in it.
Okay, cool. So that's it. I hand it back to President Gosa.
Are there any administrative reports?
None at this time.
Board request. Thank you. Board request by Director Gordon. Date of request 2/14/2022. Item request an agenda item. Description of request. I request the board discuss and later vote on a change to the district dress code for employees to allow for jeans to be worn daily. Why are you making this request? The staff deserves the... Did I say world?
World.
Okay. Deserves the world right now, but we know and they know that out of our hands are tied with a lot of that. Our hands don't have to be tied with this simple move we can make to allow them more comfort. They facing so challenging at a time when at a time when everything they face is so challenging. When would you like this? As soon as possible. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Beck. Any other board requests? Seeing none, we will move on to Director Potts' favorite part, board reflections. We'll start on this side, Director Gordon.
I just wanted to thank the TAG presenters for coming and giving some information. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before, so I was happy to hear that. And I was very impressed by all of the student board reports tonight. They were very thorough and let me know about a lot of different things that I was unaware of, despite how closely I follow all the district web pages. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Gordon. Director Potts.
I would just refer back to the TAG presentation. For me, that was very good. It gave us a broad idea of the scope of our talented and gifted program, also projection of where it's headed, and the development of it, I think, has the potential to attract students to our district and keep students in our district. I think it's very helpful.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Hayes.
I too enjoyed the TAG presentation and the fact that they were thoughtful enough to give us Valentine's cards. I think that was kind of over and above, and looks like really small people may have written on the cards. So I'm very thankful for that.
Thank you, Director Beck.
I also thought that the TAG presentation was excellent, and also I really appreciated our discussion on amending the calendar. The fact that the board was able to discuss this at a committee of the whole, and then when questions were asked about who weighed in and how this would work, you know, we got feedback, and that's really appreciated, that when we ask questions, we get answers. And so, yeah.
Thank you. Director Potts? I'm just kidding, Director Poston. I didn't want you to feel left out. I did it there too. Director Poston.
I'll go on with everyone else as far as the presentation on TAG. Again, it's something that is greatly needed in the district, and as Director Potts said, it should be an attraction to the district and also keep our students here. And the other thing that I think after our discussion with finance committee and everything, I'm glad that we're able to use some ESSER funds as far as the incentive pay.
Thank you, Director Klein-Jerome.
I also am very pleased that we are using ESSER funds to do the incentive, and hopefully that will have an outcome that we are hoping to retain people. So I'm pleased that we passed that. What I appreciate about the TAG presentation is that we are changing the way kids are identified for TAG. Too long it's been test scores, and that does not make a TAG student. They have lots of talents in lots of areas. So the shift back to looking in different areas rather than simply the test scores, and the fact that we now have a curriculum so that kids really are getting challenged, I appreciate.
Thank you. Student board members, whichever one wants to go first.
I really appreciate how tags evolved. I remember in elementary school, it was just whoever 5 people just scored the highest on the math or reading things. It was always like a neck-to-neck competition about your academic performance, and the kids that were like artistic or leadership were always like left behind. And I know that was like a big thing with just like kids not feeling appreciated when I was younger. So I really appreciate how that has evolved and changed. And then I appreciate how they are setting up they're evolving the program for high achieving students, and this is an incentive for them to improve their education.
I also appreciate that. I remember in elementary school, 4 of us would be brought in a room and we would just read this thick book and they would just ask us questions. So it's nice to hear how it's evolved. And it's nice to hear that they do break it into sections and that you don't have to be that ultimate student and kids aren't jealous that I'm not talented and gifted like the other students. They're breaking it up and each student has different achievements that they can really highlight. I'm also excited about the breakfast with the legislators. I'm in AP government and I think it's going to be really good to go back and tell them that like this is going to be really good because we're learning deep stuff right now and I think that they're really going to like that. So I'm excited for that.
Thanks for plugging that for us one more time. Superintendent Schneckloff.
Well, there are 2 things that occurred tonight. A unanimous vote on changing our benefits with nobody here. And I think that goes back to the hard work that our cabinet has put into that, led by Jamie and Kevin. That is just outstanding work, and it's going to set the tone for the future of our district. But you did it the right way. You did it with committee work and being transparent by involving stakeholders, and you did it unanimously, which is so rare. Usually the conversations you have around benefits are very similar to ones we have around the calendar. Usually somebody doesn't like some portion of it. So I'm very proud of that work. And I think another example of that is putting together the calendar work. And Jake, Willie, and Ben, and Lisa's not here, and Kim and Josh. That it takes a team of people. Jake might be the mouthpiece for that, but every one of our cabinet members are represented in that conversation. And the word calibrate that we're doing is happening, and I see it every day. We're heading in the right direction with those people over there, and the hard work that comes here are examples of it, and I'm very proud of that. And those are from 2 of the agenda items today that you guys made possible, all of you humans. So I greatly appreciate you, and the work that you're doing is making a difference. We're starting to turn the corner, and we need to continue doing that. So thank you very much. You too, Mike.
Thank you. I appreciated the student board members' reports. I love how you guys are so detailed and let us know everything that's going on. I wish all of our high schools were represented, so hopefully we can get that taken care of. And I love the fact that we were able to vote unanimously on the bonus or the bonuses for with the ESSER funds. I think that was awesome, and I greatly appreciate the finance committee and all the staff that worked on getting that done. I think that's a huge feat that we were able to do that. The tag presentation was great, and I appreciate all the discussion we have at this table, whether we don't agree or see eye to eye all the time. We're able to respectfully have discussions on things and work through things. So I appreciate everyone collaborating and working on things. And with that, we will move on to Director Potts' favorite part of the meeting.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.